Woo! Hey, besties. Where y'all at? Where y'all at? Where y'all at? Where y'all at? Let me know if you here, who's watching. Hello. Oh, the lighting. My computer is like, even though the blinds are always closed, we can tell that it's nighttime. What's up, y'all? Here for an impromptu live. I'm gonna bullshit a little bit until more people pull up because I feel like surely on a Saturday night y'all aren't doing anything. It's cold outside. Hey Deborah, good to see you. Welcome, welcome. I'm very tired, also not used to going live this late, but as y'all know, TikTok is getting banned in a matter of hours. They're already sending out the notifications to everybody, letting you know that the changes are afoot. And I think at this point, it seems like a lot of us have caught on to what is potentially about to go down. Not exactly sure how it's going to go down, but I was thinking about the astrology of it all, as I do, talking to a couple of friends about it who were not responsive at this moment. And so I felt like I wanted to come on here and talk out loud, think out loud with y'all in the meantime. So, like I said, I'm going to give a few more minutes for some more homies to pull up. Hey, bestie. Um, and just see how many people we got because I don't want to repeat myself too much. So how are y'all doing in the meantime? I'm gonna give it like a few more minutes for the messages to go out and to retweet my stuff. How are y'all this Saturday evening? How's your week been so far? Um, how are you feeling about the TikTok ban? What thoughts and feelings are you having about the state of the world at this moment? Um, just tell me how you guys are doing first. I was at work all day. I had my 9 to 4 work day, so my bedtime is soon from being up early, but it was a busy day, so I'm here. And I'm sure I'll get a boost from you guys. Samaj says practicing sobriety and suffering. That's terrible. I feel you though. I hope you're feeling better also, bestie. I know you've been unwell. Practicing sobriety at this time that the sun is in Capricorn opposite Mars is very funny to me. Catherine says, I can't lie. I'm sad. I downloaded all my favorites today. I know I didn't even do that. I have too many. I had a few TikToks that I had saved once, but honestly, I wasn't too I like get in phases with TikTok where I'm like stuck on it. But for the most part, I don't default to it like I do like Twitter or Blue Sky. I think because those are more mindless scrolling, whereas TikTok is actually entertaining and engaging to me. So it's like watching TV. um, but yeah, Smajay says it's giving clown business. I don't believe that app is going nowhere. Yeah, I have thoughts. I have thoughts. Um, because they've been trying to ban it for so long. Yeah, they've been trying to ban it. I guess because it had to go through the Supreme Court. It's taken what at least a year at this point. It's taken a very long time, several months, if not at least a year. Because I remember them saying something about like the fear mongering around TikTok is, stealing our data or giving the Chinese have access to our data. Like I feel like that line has been going on for a while now. So the fact that they're just now getting around to actually taking action on that and the timing of it all and the inauguration happening on Monday and everything else. There's a lot of, for lack of a better way to put it, conspiracy theories going around right now. But I'm gonna just go ahead and get into it. If more people pull up later, then I'll let them chime in and have their thoughts. I'll repeat myself. Fuck it. So, because I need to get the stream of consciousness going. So here's the thing, astrology wise, right? We've been in Mars retrograde. We've been in a Mars retrograde for I think we're at least I would say 2/3 of the way through it at this point. Mars is going to station direct in I think Mars is gonna leave. I don't know, when does Mars enter Leo? I should have written all this down beforehand, but I wasn't prepared. Mars in Leo. I'm pulling up the transits on my phone calendar because I have 2025 iCals available in my shop now if you haven't bought them yet. Thank you, Deborah. See, Deborah has the iCals and can pull it up. Mars goes direct February 23rd of this year. And then Mars will enter sidereal Leo on June 6th. June 6th. That's a long way away, y'all. So we only halfway through really this whole cycle, this Mars retrograde cycle from Mars spending time in Gemini and Cancer and then eventually going into Leo. So yeah, Mars is not even going to station direct until February 23rd, and then it's going to enter Leo in June. So we got like a fucking long time before any of that happens, right? So Mars retrogrades, the full cycle from start to finish usually lasts about 6 months. So we're about halfway through at this point. It's very long. And another thing tied to this Mars retrograde in ways that I don't fully understand yet, but that are starting to come together is that Mars retrograding between Gemini and Cancer is setting the stage for Jupiter in Gemini this year, which happens later in May. And then Jupiter will station retrograde in Cancer at 0 degrees Cancer, which is where Mars is right now. So if you're the type of person who journals or who documents events and the dates and the times that they happen, today is one of those days. Write down all of the major occurrences happening today, because I guarantee, because today is as hot as it is with this TikTok ban and everything else happening, tomorrow, inauguration day, and all this other shit happening, while Mars is roughly around this degree, it will be coming back when Jupiter stations direct or stations retrograde later this year, because it's going to spend about a month at this 0 degrees of Cancer, right? So I bring that up because I have thoughts about what is to come whenever it comes to mutable and cardinal signs, at least in the US, and in some ways in this larger, broader global sense that, again, haven't fully figured out just yet. So on the mutable side, with Saturn moving into Pisces in March, end of March, on the same day we have a big Pisces stellium, that to me already shows that we are moving into like a very long season of like our perception of reality changing as far as like what is true and what is real for us. One of the most obvious ways that this is transpiring to me is through AI and how AI is taking over technology, something that we've kind of been saying for the last couple of years now, but it's starting to be painfully obvious how much it's infiltrating us. But I also think with this mutable theme, remember, mutable signs with sidereal astrology have to do with truth and discernment and certainty, is that um social media and excuse me, and the way that we've been using it for the last 2.5 decades is really what's been shaping our perception of reality. And let me explain that. So I was just watching a TikTok. I'm going to reference a few TikToks that I was just watching that spurred these thoughts. I was just watching a TikTok of this girl talking about her like emotionally breaking down to her dad and asking, like, why is everything so bad right now? And, they're going to ban TikTok, blah, blah, blah. And so her dad, who I'm sure was a boomer, like many of our dads, was like, hey, like bad shit has happened many times over history, but consider the difference in this moment is that when bad shit was happening in history up to this point, things like the Vietnam War, the Cold War, Watergate, Ronald Reagan's presidency, JFK getting shot, just like all of the other massive historical events that have happened over the last century, the public, at least in America, only had access to news at like the 5 or 6 o'clock news, and then maybe again at like 11:30. And it was through legacy media on TV, or it was through the radio, or it was through some like state funded, state sponsored, whatever, media outlet to basically like obviously like control the population's perception of whatever's going on. And so the difference of today and like, things like Google, things like social media are younger than a lot of us. I just turned 30. Google is younger than me. Facebook is younger than me. Twitter is damn sure younger than me. Okay. I was in middle school, I think, whenever Twitter came out. Like all of these social media apps, they're only in their first or second decade of existence. And so the ways that we have had access to news yes, on like a minute by minute scale, but also on a worldwide scale to the point that people are on Redbook, Little Red Book, Red Note, talking to Chinese citizens who have had TikTok banned from them, who have had other social media like Twitter and all these other platforms banned in China or Russia or wherever else, asking Americans like, "Hey, is this stuff that our government has told us about your country true?" And like finding out how many things were true and weren't true. And the same thing happening for Americans, finding out that a lot of stuff that they were told about China was or wasn't true. You know, it's kind of like that awkward moment when bin Laden's letter to the US got released and kids who were born like in the late early 2000s were reading it and realizing like, wait a second, were we the bad guys? Anyway, so not to get too deep into that, but basically this idea that we've only had access to the World Wide Web for a blip in the amount of America's existence and like, and just the concept of the perspective of the history of the world. And so the fact that we got to watch sounds weird, but the fact that we were able to watch the genocide happening in Palestine for the last 2 years and get minute by minute updates, to have immediate, like, direct conversations and to see with our own eyes from the cameras of our peers what was going on in Palestine and in Israel over the last few years is like there no amount of propaganda for most people was going to be enough to have someone think that that actually needed to be happening and that that was actually like a reasonable response. It would be like if I'm trying to think of something else that we lived through when we were really young. It would be like if we were able to actually like speak to and witness up front people in Afghanistan and Iran and Iraq while we were having like all of those wars during like the Bush administration. If we were able to talk to people directly while that was happening and find out that like there are no weapons of mass destruction and that whole thing. Imagine what that would have been like for us culturally and what that would have been like for us instead of just getting news from legacy media, right? And so TikTok was a big part of that. Twitter was a big part of that. I'm sure Instagram and Facebook to some extent. I don't know about Facebook really, but I don't even really know about Instagram. But all of our social media platforms were somewhat responsible for like this awakening. They've been using woke as a pejorative for the last 3 years, but this awakening and this elevation of consciousness amongst the masses to realize like what actually the United States and its military be up to around the world that we normally aren't told. So if you're not really on social media, you're probably not fully aware of all the nuances of that. But if you're on social media, you actually know too much. And the government is very aware of that. And I'm not even trying to be tinfoil hat about it. I'm just saying, like, it is in the government's best interest, especially the United States government with the strongest military in the entire world and all of our military bases, like the most military bases in the world, and all that shit. Like the ways that we are a very young country, but a very powerful country in the very unstable way. And then you add in, our economic power as well. Um, it's a really big deal that the government's not able to just get away with shit and tell us whatever story they want to tell us about their actions and have us just be okay with it and just fall for the okey doke. So back to the astrology, Gemini is a sign that we've previously said can be kind of gullible because Gemini really just wants to consume whatever information is available and not necessarily have its own opinion about it. It's just a lot of taking things at face value sometimes. And then whatever you do with that information kind of depends on the individual. So I think it's interesting then to think about Mars, a very disruptive planet moving through the sign Gemini, having this retrograde phase, but not just this retrograde not just happening in Gemini, which leads me to the next part. So as much as Gemini is about information and consuming it, spreading it, sharing it, whatever, and the I don't know, stories that we tell about that information, and the meanings that we derive from the information. Then you get to Cancer, and Cancer is about, to me, at least in this era in 2025 and 2024, Cancer has been about consumption. And I say consumption specifically because the US is a consumer society. I took a class, I've talked about this before, but I took a class for my sociology minor in college called Consumer Society that kind of radicalized me because it made me aware of just how much everything in the US is about entertainment. It's about entertainment, it's about like the spectacle of of entertainment and just the spectacle of like being captivated by these big, like bold, audacious, like I don't know, events, whether that's going out to eat at these like themed restaurants, going to amusement parks, going to the movies, or watching movies and TV and just the entertainment industry in general, and how so much of what we consider to be free in the US kind of does have to do with, I think, the freedom to create and tell whatever story you want to tell. Um, and actually kind of going back to the mutable sign stuff, something I've thought about in more recent years was this idea of like, free speech is something that we talk about in the US a lot that is like our most prized possession. Like I wouldn't be able to be on YouTube right now saying the things that I'm saying right now if free speech wasn't protected by our constitution, right? But what I think is ironic about free speech is that, while we can entertain each other and have all these conversations and do all of these things without too much fear of the FBI knocking on your door. um there's it's an interesting thing to deal with because on the one hand, yes, you can say anybody can say anything that they want, and on the other hand, anybody can say anything that they want. So we can speculate on what we think our government is up to. And the government can even tell us whatever they want to tell us, release whatever documents they want to release. They can do things in broad daylight and us notice it. But because all of us have different opinions about whether we agree or don't agree with what the government is doing, again, any of us can have any opinion on what's going on, what we're witnessing. And there's not one singular truth that the entire country kind of like unifies behind. So it's like you can try to call out, let's say, the food industry, another thing that we consume. We can try to call out the food industry for all of the poisons and the toxins and the ways that they manufacture our food and the regulations or lack thereof of our food and have whole conversations about that, as many people do. And you can even take it so far as to running off into conspiracy land or eugenicist land or whatever land and get completely turn people off from the food industry, but at the end of the day, you still have to eat in the United States. So, you know, there's only so much that talking about all of these problems is going to do, especially if you're a person who only has access to like junk food in a food desert, right? So, people talking about that and having those conversations, it's like interesting to learn, but it only goes so far in terms of what we actually have power to control in our daily lives. So, I don't know, I think the free speech thing is interesting in that sense because yeah, like you can speak truth to power, but how much impact does it really have in a society that is basically conditioned to consume anyway or to enjoy something anyway? It's like one of the last discourses on TikTok was about Beyonce propaganda, like I talked about on my last live. Does that mean anybody's going to stop listening to Beyonce and stop going to her concerts? No. Do you think anybody really cares? And so, one TikTok that I actually wanted to play that I think really kind of nailed hit the head on the hammer of what it was that I wanted to talk about was this one that really ties together like, yeah, even if they take away TikTok, like what is that really going to change for y'all? So, I don't know. Hopefully you can hear it. I'm going to play out my iPad. Let's see.
Pass that bill.
Okay.
Do you think that the government cares that you know that they bought stock in Meta before they passed that bill? They're banking on the fact you're not going to do anything about it, that you're going to be so soothed by your comfort. You're going to go back to watching Netflix and ordering something on DoorDash that costs your hourly wage and you make $30 an hour. It's going to mindlessly scroll on another app, state sanctioned this time, of course, right? It's going to soothe your mind from the fact that you can't afford to buy a house, let alone your rent, that eggs and red meat cost the same amount in the grocery store. And if you know anything about economics, that's saying something. That you can't afford anything for real, that your government don't even represent you, steal from you every year. They don't think you have any heart. Case in point, there's this man, a foreign man that worked at a construction site, right? The construction site let him go in the craziest way. Like, they did him dirty. They didn't pay him, stole some of his equipment, told him to kick rocks. The next day, everybody who was from where that man was from did not come into work, took their equipment with them, and sabotaged some of the work they had did the day before, sending a message: today is you, tomorrow is me. We are not stronger than the boss individually, but we are stronger together. So let's sacrifice our comfort for a little while so that our future can actually be secure. They got heart. And a lot of times, people from these foreign places, they have community-based society where they see each other in their neighbor, where they raise each other's children. A child is a child of the village, and everybody's going to have a hand in raising that child. They know each other deeply. But because we live in individualized, like individualistic society, we don't have that mindset. You've been going to get gas at the same place for 5 years. You don't even know the people that work in there by name. And that's the reason why you love TikTok, is because it gives us that sense of security. It gives us that sense that we're actually in a community. The stuff that we crave for, the things that you didn't even know that you were missing for real. And that's what they don't want, because let's say we start being in a community. The same thing that happened to that construction boss is the same thing that can happen with the government if we get some heart. It's all about what you will allow and what you won't allow, what you'll allow yourself to be placated from and won't be placated from. Food for thought.
Right? Okay, so I was like, damn, that's like dead on what I wanted to talk about, because yeah, cancer is the experience. Sidereal cancer is that experience of like being coddled, being indulged, being placated, being given a pacifier when you're in distress. And the pacifier is not really what you need. Ain't no nutrients in the pacifier, right? Like there's not a hug in the pacifier. At best, it might make your gums feel better, but it's not really doing anything other than getting you to the next moment, or at least temporarily relieving your distress. And I feel like that's what America's all about. Temporarily relieving your distress with this thing that's not really nurturing or nourishing you. And I think at the heart of a lot of these conspiracies, at the heart of like this whole Make America Healthy Again movement that's coming up with RFK Jr., and even a lot of these people who just like dick ride for Trump real bad, like they are looking for somebody to save them. They are looking for somebody to help them feel better. They're aware that they're sick, that there's something wrong, that they're not getting what they need, and maybe this person is a step closer to the relief that I'm seeking out, but then not really knowing what it is, what the issue is that we actually need relief from. The issue, of course, being like, yes, capitalism. It's deeper than capitalism though, like it is the lack of community and relationship. Yes. It's just like we've been completely divorced from our relationship to our bodies and to our humanity, because that's really what's in relationships. That's really what we're asking for whenever we want to deviate from capitalism, in terms of like being able to rest and being able to, I don't know, enjoy small things and go outside and breathe fresh air and drink clean water. Like it's basic needs, that we've been deprived of for so long. And so, TikTok just being a smaller example of this larger experience we're having, where the people with all the money and all the toys and basically who are restricting access, or controlling, rather, to use a cardinal word, access to the things that we actually need to sustain life, are buying all of the things that we need to sustain life. And we're kind of just letting them, like social media has effectively been our third space for a really long time, because they've taken over, parks, they've taken over malls, they've taken over any other place where just like people would like to congregate, because it's either filled with propaganda, or it's unclean, unhealthy, hazardous to exist there in some kind of a way, or you have to pay to get in, you have to pay to live near it, you have to drive to it because it's away, or like in Austin, one of the large parks that we have in the middle of the city, they want to pave over it and put a amusement park there, instead of just leaving it to be this massive dog park where people like play volleyball and frisbee and shit. Like everything is behind a paywall. And so social media was like one of the last things where you had somewhat free access to it if you have internet connection and a device, where people can come together and like congregate and just like shoot the shit. TikTok, that's definitely something I've heard a lot about TikTok as well, is just a place where people were able to hang out. And then in the process, you were able to get a bag and monetize it as well. And that's also in this somewhere, is this the ways that like influencer culture also being something relatively new. It's like once billionaires or marketers or whoever it was figured out that we were skipping commercials, or that we stopped watching cable TV because we wanted to stream and get things ad free. They were like, okay, well, we have to figure out how to market to people somehow. So how about we just make people be the advertisements? That way people don't necessarily know when they're being marketed to in this obvious way. And then, like, if people want to create entertainment instead of watching things from the entertainment industry, then we can just throw ads onto their YouTube videos. We can throw ads onto their TikToks, onto their Instagram photos or pages or whatever. It's like, I remember another one of the things I learned was that the US is one of the only countries, I think one of the only countries where they actually advertise pharmaceuticals to us, like on daytime television, having pharmaceuticals marketed to you and then telling you to go ask your doctor and see if this medication is right for you. Like, we're one of the only countries who do that. Other countries look at us and think that we are nuts because that happens. And so I don't know. It's just I'm all over the place and I'm rambling, but I'm noticing just how interconnected, like, or rather, I'm noticing just how much this process is both being disrupted and being refined, in a sense where just when we start to gain a little bit of control as people, then the state and the oligarchs find a way to take that too. Elon Musk has to buy Twitter just in time for the next election, and then basically buy the election and manipulate the masses, and now it's fucking MAGA circle jerk on that thing, right? Instagram and Facebook get taken over by Zuckerberg, and now all of that same thing, just Republican wasteland for the most part. And TikTok, now the same thing. More than likely has been purchased by Meta. And if it hasn't been purchased by Meta, it'll be purchased by somebody who's shaking hand with Trump's, even though Trump is the original person who also like got behind the TikTok ban. And then he's going to come out on the other side of his inauguration saving TikTok, and then winning over a whole bunch of like Gen Z and Gen Alpha influencers and creators who were getting their bag on TikTok. Because what? The only loyalty we have is to our entertainment. The only loyalty we have is to the bag. The only loyalty we have, and it's not again, not just as shallow as like people want to be rich. It's they've been fed propaganda of what it means to be rich for so long. What it means to have money in this country is to have power and control and domination over other people, to be able to separate yourself from people in a way that makes you feel important and valuable, and I don't know, that you can leave behind some kind of legacy, but also that you can do very little work, in the 9 to 5 sense, and still make enough money to survive. But at the end of the day, these are all just different manifestations of people wanting to be free in some kind of a way from just being cogs in the system that, feed the military industrial complex at the end of the day. That there's more to life than just manipulating the stock market. I don't know. There's so many things I still feel like I need to learn about, not even politics so much as like economics and what is the word? I just lost it. Just went blank. Imperialism and this kind of global economic power that the US has, that the US is losing slowly. And so that being part of the reason why billionaires are trying to regain control, because TikTok is not just in the US, obviously, it's a Chinese app, but it's global as well. People all over the world are using TikTok. So the audacity that an American company would need to buy out ByteDance in order to make it legal to use TikTok in the US is absurd. Like, think about that. Think about that. Just the fact that Elon could even purchase Twitter the way that he did and how much money and power and influence and how influential you become whenever you own an app that has access to people's thoughts, that can amplify certain people's thoughts and erase other people's thoughts. Like that's massive. So this TikTok ban thing, it's setting a precedent. It's setting a precedent in more ways than I think I can even articulate right now and that we even understand because of its how far and wide reaching its impacts are. And I don't know. I just when you really think about that, everything that we've said so far, like how there used to be a time where you could only consume news information from the state and now you can get it from other people and you can't necessarily have the wool pulled over your eyes. Like it's obvious water is wet. We've been talking about this for a while, but the fact that it's actually happening, this is what I meant whenever I was talking on I think it was Sunday or Monday whenever I was talking about like the sober reality of the moment and fascism and how the world is changing right in front of our eyes. And so if you're going to imagine a future or reimagine a future, like you need to kind of reimagine it in the form of dystopia first because that's where we're at, you know? And like, yeah, TikTok will probably come back. Like we thought Twitter was gonna die how many times, and that bitch is still here and kicking. TikTok basically going through the same thing. It might go dark for a few days. Somebody else was talking about it might go dark for a few days because it has to if they're going to trade the servers over to whoever just bought it out or whoever owns it next or whatever's going to happen next to make it accessible because that's the other thing like so many people were employed from TikTok in one way or another that is not like inconsequential, so that's like a big hit to the American economy as well, and I guess the global economy to some extent as well. Other countries are selling products on there to Americans who consume fucking everything. So, but whether it comes back or it doesn't come back, um, it's setting a precedent, like we said, for other people or for other media outlets, I guess, in the US to behave a certain way. So, state sanctioned entertainment, all this talk from MAGA and from Republicans about free speech, this and that. And look where we are. And anybody who's been paying attention can see it, but it's just, I don't know. So anyway, back to the astrology. I think obviously this is a lot of Mars retrograde disrupting our access to information and disrupting somewhat of our ability to control um our surroundings and the things that we consume. And then Jupiter is going to move through Gemini and basically like recontextualize our relationship to information and media, I think. At least for well, I mean, yeah, so much of that transit happens while Saturn is in Pisces. And Jupiter is the planet that rules Pisces, right? So Jupiter is basically in charge of Saturn for the next 3 years. Whatever Jupiter is doing, Saturn is kind of answering to making meaning about the Jupiter transit. So we're going to have Jupiter in Cancer, Jupiter in Gemini, Jupiter in Cancer, Jupiter in Leo. I think we even get Jupiter in Virgo at the tail end of it as well. Yeah. I know we for sure get Jupiter in Leo before Saturn enters Aries. So all of that is going to be like changing our experience. Like I would say like changing our emotional experience of reality. And I don't think that necessarily captures what I'm trying to say, but the meaning that we give to our experiences like shifting over the next 3 years in a big way, in a big like foundational fundamental way. And the first part is our relationship to information and our relationship to media and our relationship to consumption shortly after that. Or maybe the meaning, I'm thinking out loud now, but maybe the meaning or the the not the meaning, the beliefs. I don't know. Obviously, the indoctrination to consumer culture shifting, just the culture shifting itself in such a big way. I don't know. I don't fully know where Saturn and Pisces is taking us, but we going somewhere, baby. We going somewhere quickly. And I think we'll be very disoriented along the way if we don't stay grounded in something, in some kind of a core belief or core uh I don't know, like interpretation of like the world and the reality that we live in. That sounds kind of esoteric, but it's happening now. I mean, if we go through this whole situation and somehow Trump ends up being a hero and gaining favor from the public after the last 3 years of us trying to say, "Hey, like that man's a fascist for real." And people are all of a sudden like, "Oh, well maybe he's not that bad. Look, he saved TikTok." Like, please, please. I don't know. So, I think I don't know if that was all that I had to say, but I'm curious what y'all think cuz yeah, it's like the other part of it being climate change as well, something that I think about with cardinal signs. And I imagine or I anticipate climate disaster stuff really starting to hit the fan. It's already shit's already hitting the fan with that, but I expect it to really be a problem come the time Saturn enters Aries. Like I think that'll really be the crisis point if we haven't done something by then. But I do think the public perception of like what that is may be distorted along the way. It also may not. It also may be a lot of people like really coming to terms with the fact that we're on a runaway train. But if I don't know if I'm speculating on that correctly, I mean we'll probably see a lot of that stuff happening with Jupiter and Cancer as well. So I don't know. That's 2026 stuff basically, but the consumption and the overindulgence aspect of Cancer transits in general and like what Cancer I think kind of represents for us in a larger humanitarian sense is definitely the more that we consume, like the more we have to produce, and the more that we produce, the more that we are stealing from Earth, basically, and kind of stealing our own time on Earth as well, being comfortable. Uh, Burning up fossil fuels, we're running out of those, running out of clean water. Billionaires are buying up all the damn water. Um, and just the lives that are sacrificed to maintain the standard of living that we have right now. There's no way. It's suicidal, you know? But I do think the messaging around a lot of these things, as much as we're seeing it and we're feeling it viscerally in real time, I think the messaging around it will be so squirrely that people will kind of struggle to really believe it. Like there will be so many disinformation campaigns and so much like contrasting evidence or conversation or even just distracting conversations that are making you think that this little thing right here is a problem when really it's all of this other stuff back here behind the curtain that people are unwilling to acknowledge because it would mean that they have to be uncomfortable even more than they already are. Stuff like that. I just see it being really difficult to stay focused and to like not lose the plot. Um yeah, there's a lot of complacency, American audacity, yes. Makes a lot of sense what you're saying. We'll need a lot of Virgo sensibility, practicality to stay grounded with Saturn and Pisces. Yes, and actually one of the first things that we'll be dealing with as far as like a major Virgo transit is next fall. Like late. Actually, I think it's um yeah, if Mars in Leo is in June, then by like August, Mars will be in Virgo and it'll be our first Mars Saturn opposition of Saturn and Pisces, and those are always big deals, beef between Mars and Saturn. So um, that opposition, I think, will be disruptive. It will shed a lot of light, probably on just how much we're being misinformed, because I do see Virgo as a sign that deals with misinformation as well, just Mercury ruled signs. But especially like ways that data and information can be manipulated is stuff that usually comes up with Virgo, so that people think that they're getting like concrete evidence of something, but whenever there's also Pisces transits at the same time, it's like, yes, but who funded this study? Like, what was the context that the study was done in? um who like does it serve to believe, to read the data in this particular way? Like, just stuff like that, where it makes it tricky to discern truth, because depending on what your personal angle is with that information, or what you want to do with that information, how you want to make use of it, it can be easy to, yeah, manipulate stuff like that too. So I'm not looking forward to this shit, guys. The mutable madness of August 2025, I believe it's August 2025. Me and Reed were talking about this a while back. Just looks so, the fact that it would be happening at the same time as Leo transits, where you're usually dealing with authority figures and people in positions of power, and like battling for some sense of power, and like uh I don't know, just the power struggles that come with authority issues. Like, I could see that being part of it too. And that, not to mention, I haven't even talked about the eclipses being in Aquarius and Leo after we just had Saturn in Aquarius for 3 years. Like, and I don't even know, I haven't even spent enough time thinking about that because I've been so stuck in the mutable stuff. But that just amplifies a lot of the mutable stuff going on too, because Saturn, planet that rules Aquarius, is in Pisces, and then the sun will be wherever it's going to be as far as what rules the south node in Leo. So I don't fucking know. But it's not just the US that's becoming more fascist. The whole world is becoming more fascist. And I think usually, if I understand correctly, fascism is usually a response to the people coming together a little bit too much, or the people being a little bit harder to control. So fascism is like the, hey, get back in line, attempt from the people with all the money and the power to like snap us back into, whatever system of whatever social structure is hot at the moment. At this moment, it being capitalism, of course, imperialism. When the people are starting to get a little bit too wise, you have to take things away from them so that they can become dependent on the state again, so that they have to go back to work. We saw this a lot with COVID, lifting COVID restrictions and forcing people to go back into the office. No more work from home, because you bitches were too free with your work from home, making your little TikToks and talking too much truth on the internet. Right? Like, it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. Like, I feel like that's another reason why they're like, okay, we got to shut this TikTok shit down, because there's not enough people at work. We need to send people back to the mines. Okay, mining for our precious minerals and risking their lives in the oil field, instead of making their silly little TikToks and doing their little dances. Like, no, you guys need to get back into the field. So you guys need to get back in line. No more of you people changing your genders, okay? Because if you change your gender, we can't enforce social gender norms on you guys and make you fall in line and do these jobs and these things that you're supposed to do. We can't control you if you're just out here not abiding by the gender norms and the social structures that we've embedded into society. Because how are we going to bully and shame you into behaving a certain way if you've decided that you don't fit into the norms and to the roles that we've pre-designated for you, So now we have to make trans people an enemy. And we damn sure can't have you guys out here befriending immigrants, and we can't whatever, we have to, for whatever reason, I get so lost in the sauce on that shit. Like, yeah, we can't have you guys out here stealing jobs from American people. We need American people back in the mines, right? Like, so I don't know, it's just Capricorn transits, man. They never fail to be like, hey, by the way, you're being neglected by your government. Like, your government is pulling the wool over your eyes again and making you accept so much less than what you actually deserve, and you guys are just taking it. Why? Shake the table. So, I don't know. How uncomfortable do we have to get? That's been the question for the last 5 years. It's been the question for the last forever, but especially, like, since the lockdown era. Like, how uncomfortable do you have to get? Because that was the wildest thing about that too. And those were major Capricorn transits. 2020, if you're new here, 2020 through 2023, essentially, part of 2022, but 2023, Saturn was in Capricorn, and that was the pandemic, that was COVID, stopping the world and saying like, "Hey, so have you considered what your life would be like if it wasn't like this? Have you considered what life would be like if you were allowed to slow down for a minute? If you were allowed to just like fucking stop for a minute and acknowledge the limits of your body?" Um, have you considered what your life would be like whenever you can't just freely consume uh every second of the day without having to consider like death? Um it did make us have to confront our mortality in a big way that I think freaked a lot of people out. Everyone was like, "No, I don't like that. I actually want to go back to my silly little comforts. I want to go back to my job. I want to go back to my routines where life was predictable and I could anticipate what was going to happen next. I don't like this moment of uncertainty that we're experiencing. I don't like not knowing if I'm going to live or die every 5 minutes. I don't like not knowing what my day is going to look like tomorrow. I don't like not knowing if the people around me are safe or not. I don't like not knowing. I don't like not knowing. I want consistency. I want predictability. Just let me go back to work, please." Like, people were dead ass protesting to go back to work. And not for nothing, like, not just because people wanted to go back for the work for the sake of going to work, but because obviously our labor is tied to our ability to get our needs met. Like, we are imprisoned in that sense. So like, yeah, people were like, "Yeah, I can't just sit here and fucking have slumber parties in the middle of the week. Like, I need income, I need money, I need to be able to sustain myself, and the government is not supporting me in doing that. So we need to go back to work. Fuck it. Healthcare be damned." Like, I need to find a way. So I don't know. Just more ways that we struggle to see life outside of capitalism, which is all that we know, and struggle to see life outside of consumerism because that's all we know, and mass consumption in general because that's all we know. We've gotten used to it, and to have to sacrifice some things, as they were just saying in that video, to have to sacrifice some of these comforts and some of these privileges that we get for living inside of the imperial core and whatnot, would be devastating to a lot of people. And a lot of people are very aware and hip to the game and don't want to give that up, and in fact think that they are going to be the next, you know, whatever, next agent of the state, basically, or the next billionaire or the next whatever. They have a vested interest in actually like maintaining the status quo. And so there are plenty of people who are on board who are like, "Fuck yeah, we're going to take Greenland. Fuck yeah, we're going to take the Panama Canal back, and fuck Jimmy Carter because blah, 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 blah." Like, there are people who dead ass believe that and add a smooth "hell yeah, brother" on the end of it because they think that that's right, that they're entitled to that American entitlement we were talking about. Like, they think they're entitled to basically this whole thing of like, well, these guys are just fucking losers and our army's so strong, da, 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 so we can have whatever we want and everybody else just lost, and that's just humanity, or that's just, called reality. Reality is harsh. Like, our military's so big and bad, who gonna stop us? Who gonna check me, boo? They don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck. They're down for it. Those are the people who voted for Trump. They want that. They want more of that. In fact, they're down for it because all the shit benefits them, or at least they think it benefits them. It doesn't really, but the odds are not really in your favor like that. But when you believe that they are, then yeah, you're down for this shit, or at the very least, you understand the consequences of like if our military was to back down or pull out of some of these places, how that kind of leaves us vulnerable because we've pissed so much of the rest of the world off. Like, you know, that's why they fearmonger about Russia and China all the time and North Korea, because who else doing it like us, you know? It's just so cringe. I don't know. Ugh. Oh, hey, Jim. You feel me. You picking up what I'm putting down. So yeah, I think kind of like I was saying on live the other day, one of the best things that we can do right now is to get to know people near us, get to know your neighbors and shit, or, you know, small random acts of kindness to kind of learn how to be communal again. And for me personally, I could be wrong, you know, whatever, but for me personally, whenever people are talking about building community, like, especially with how much mutable stuff is on the horizon, I definitely don't see community building being something that will come easy or that can happen just because community has kind of become this buzzword. I think community building in this context is going to take years. Like, this is a marathon, not a sprint type shit. So if you are under the impression that, like, the first group of friends that you make or the first, like, organization that you get involved with or whatever is, like, now overnight becoming your community, I think that's kind of the wrong way to approach it. Not because you should always be inherently distrustful of people, but because a lot of us are distrustful of each other right now. And so we're going to be skeptical and suspicious of each other until we've proven time and time again, over and over and over, that we can be trusted. And unfortunately, building trust, this might be the realest thing I've said in a long time, but unfortunately, building trust requires, like, fucking it up and fixing it over and over and over and over and over again. Like, trust trust isn't built necessarily because we never betray each other. I know that sounds weird. I mean, maybe it is, right? Maybe part of trust is, like, not actively betraying each other, but because I believe, because we are human and because we fuck up sometimes and because we have faults and because we can't read each other's minds, basically, and because a lot of us have lost so much curiosity for each other that we kind of don't know each other as well as we think that we do, that we're going to mess up and get it wrong and hurt each other, you know, like, that's inevitable. That's just part of being in relationship, and something that I think we've gotten really bad at as a species because of colonialism and everything else that has taught us to hate each other, is that we're more skeptical of each other than we are willing to try to repair from betrayals and breaches of trust. But if there's anything I've learned from being in friendships or relationships or whatever for long periods of time, it's that you the trust in that relationship grows because of the conflict repair cycle. The moments where you realize just how different you are and just how much you disagree, or the times that you do accidentally hurt each other in these ways or unintentionally hurt each other in these ways, and then find ways to fix it and not do that shit again. You know, like, the trust is kind of built from, wow, you recognized that this was wrong, and then you actually made an attempt to hold yourself accountable and repair it and not let that shit happen again. That's how trust is built. And so I think we have a very low tolerance for deceit and betrayal, as we should, but we really suck. We really fucking suck at letting people letting people fix their mistakes, fix their wrongdoings. We really suck at allowing people, like, as much as people talk about being abolitionist and restorative justice and all this other stuff, like, anytime somebody tries to come back around after getting something wrong, we just fucking vilify them. We put them up on the stake. It's just like we put people up on pedestals in the first place just so that we can shove them off and then, like, taunt them while they're down and then never let them stand back up again. What is that about? It's like, this is a conversation, y'all. Some of y'all might hate me for this, so sorry. I told y'all I was gonna be scaring the hose in my unpopular opinion era, but, like, this whole thing that we've been talking about on Twitter with people who have decided to start masking again, like, it's one thing if someone stopped masking, they had bad opinions about it, whatever, they've started masking again for whatever reason. And this is the thing we've been wanting people to do, right? And if people start doing the things that we wanted them to do again, why on earth would we vilify them for doing the thing that we wanted them to start doing again? At best, say nothing, right? Like, just don't acknowledge it. If you feel bitter and hurt and betrayed and just like, violently offended by these people who have decided to start doing the thing again that we begged them to do for all this time, then just don't acknowledge it. But why would you make it worse? Why would you make it worse? Like, if you don't want to be a person who thanks them, who pats them on the back, who tells them they're doing a good job, who validates them, then fine. You don't have to be that person. And I understand it, especially from the perspective of someone who has been shit on and left to die essentially from all of these people. I understand if you don't want to be the person who comes around and pats people on the back. So don't, but also don't crucify people for doing the thing that we wanted them to do that has a net positive benefit on all of us as a collective. Like, let them come back around to it. Just don't say anything. Positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement in the actual psychological sense are not what you think they are. Positive reinforcement can look like both telling someone they're doing a good job and validating them, but it can also look like spanking someone, because positive reinforcement involves adding a stimulus. So is the stimulus going to nudge them in the correct direction, or is the stimulus going to nudge them in a direction that's just going to make them want to stop doing the thing you want them to do, right? Negative reinforcement is taking away a stimulus. So taking away a stimulus can be not ridiculing them for wearing a mask, because they're probably expecting it. They're probably expecting to be shit on for wearing a mask because they've been shitting on other people for wearing a mask. So negative reinforcement also looks like just shutting up. Just shut the fuck up and let them mask and don't say anything. And that will remind them like, oh, okay, so maybe this isn't so bad. Sure, nobody's patting me on the back, but also nobody is making fun of me. So maybe it's not so bad, right? That's also negative reinforcement. So I just, fun little psychology thing. But I personally, being the person that I am and in the situations and circumstances that I'm in, will be thanking people and saying like, hey, I appreciate you masking. And leaving it at that. It doesn't have to be a whole fucking thing, but I want people to keep doing the thing that I want them to do, so I'm going to validate. But at the very least, like, the point of all of this is like, if people are going to come around and do the right thing, no matter how they come back around to it, at least in the short run, like, let them be better. If people are going to go out of their way to apologize sincerely after hurting you and try to do the right thing, let them. They don't have to like automatically become your bestie again and you just act like nothing ever happened. No, it doesn't have to be like that, but let people try to amend their mistakes. That is how you build trust. This is not saying that people should just like accept abuse and put up with abuse and put up with cycles of abuse. No, because abuse is not going to build trust. It's just continuing manipulation. But part of the thing is like, we're not always going to know when somebody is manipulating us or not. In the same way that you're not always going to know whenever you're in a cult or not. You're not always going to know when you're being propagandized or not. You're not always going to know. More mutable uncertainty shit. Like, and that sucks. But that's part of the reason why it helps to be in relationship with people who can also help you parse that shit out, but if we're ever going to get anywhere with this idea of community, like, yeah, ultimately we're going to have to deal with people screwing up and getting it wrong and making terrible decisions and figuring out how to deal with that in ways that, actually allows for humanity to progress. I don't 100% know what that looks like, but I have a pretty decent idea of what that looks like. And a lot of it is like, yeah, having to get over ourselves and recover from uncomfortable situations. I don't know. I don't have the answers of like what to do with abusers. I don't know what to do with pedophiles. I don't know what to do with people who have done really big, terrible wrongs in that way. Those are not the situations and the extremes that I'm talking about. I'm just talking about something as simple as people on the internet. since that's where we seem to have a lot of our community right now, or your friends or other people that you're in daily relationships with, your coworkers, the people at the store, the people at the gas station, whoever the fuck. Like, we have to start building some kind of trust with each other through consistent positive experiences of some sort. So I don't know. We have to be a little bit open, friends, and it's uncomfortable, but part of the process of learning how to trust again. And again, marathon, not a sprint. This will take years because we become so individualized, especially post lockdowns and in this weird quadruple pandemic era. Like even the government is going to have to figure out how to earn our trust back if they want to survive anything else ever again, because of how badly they rolled out vaccines, because of how bad their pandemic messaging has been, because of all that shit. Like, they're going to have to earn our trust back too. And, you know, should we ever get to a place where we get the right people in government and where government stops being about, you know, lobbyists and corporations like running the show and oligarchs running the show, if we ever got to a place where the government actually served the people, we would have to learn how to trust them again too. So that shit sucks, but we need a functioning government that we can depend on and rely on. As much as we don't want to depend on them, like, we can't do everything ourselves. We can't manage everything ourselves. We do need some people in leadership positions that can actually like take on these roles and manage this stuff. But again, years down the line, imperialism has to implode first, and that's also not going to happen overnight. It will happen, I think, faster than we like it to, in terms of how uncomfortable it would be, but that's not something that I think is happening overnight either. Billionaires are not going out without a fight and without sacrificing as many of us as possible. Yeah, I was talking about Red Note too. I was talking about Red Note earlier as well, and just like having access to information from other countries directly who we otherwise like wouldn't really speak to. I think it's wild that Red Note can be purchased in the US in the first place. I would imagine they'd shut that shit down fast, but maybe not. So yeah. I think that's all that I have to say for today. I've been on here for an hour. That's my limit. I need to start winding down so I can go to sleep. But if you haven't liked the video, please like the video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed. I usually go live every Monday at noon, Central Standard Time. I've gone live a few extra times this week just because it's my birthday and because shit's going down in the sky. So I will be back on Monday at noon to talk about probably more of what I talked about today, because I'm sure over the next couple of days, more things will happen. More events will happen, and I will have more things to sit on and chew on, as will y'all. So please bring your commentary with you. Inauguration Day is also on Monday. Hang in there, besties. Hang in there. I'm going to do my best to still host this workshop next Sunday, if I can get my life together. It has been really difficult for me to focus long enough on doing a basics workshop, because it's really hard to teach basics. I have to like remember what you would even need to learn about astrology as somebody who is not already like a novice or an intermediate user, you know? So I will work on that, but yeah, if you are interested in that workshop, you can sign up for it on my website, in my booking site, mixedmercury.as.me/101. And other than that, I think that's it. Thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate you listening. You are so welcome. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you. Is it Ika? Not sure how to say your name. Sorry if I butchered it, but nice to see you here as well. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, wisdom, and insight. Happy belated birthday. Thank you so much. Dirty 30. I love it here already. Jupiter year is lit. Very insightful. Thank you so much for being here, Deborah. Yeah, nice to see some new faces here. I'm glad that I could hang out with y'all live on a Saturday night. I hope y'all have a wonderful evening. Take care of yourselves, drink water, and enjoy the last few hours of TikTok before who knows what happens next. Aika, thank you. Appreciate it. I love that. That's beautiful. Yeah. So y'all have a good night. I will talk to you very soon and send this to your homies to watch the replay. Toodaloo. Cue outro music.